and then start.
Welcome
to Mountaineer Rants. I'm Terry. This is Paul. We're here to recap the Texas-West Virginia game and also maybe give you a couple things, little things to talk about for the Big 12 conference.
Time to rehash the Big 12 and review it now that we're partway through the season.
Well, this game didn't go like we wanted it to Saturday night. West Virginia lost to Texas 38-20. Texas was ahead 28-0 before we really got settled in, and it really wasn't competitive. They beat us pretty good. So the unfortunate thing is we got beat, but we played a little better in the second half, although Texas may not have cared at that point. So
we could move the ball down the field. Texas could pretty much score at will. Yeah. 38 points was what we probably expected Texas would do, but we thought we'd be able to put points up, and we weren't. We weren't able to.
We had times when we stopped them on their first drive. We stopped them. We had them stuck down deep in their own end with a fumble and let them out with mistakes and penalties, late hit and the face mask. So it wasn't competitive. They beat our behinds. It's just that simple.
My summary would be they had the better athletes. We knew that. And to quote us, we said a week ago that if they played their best game, we played our best game, they probably beat us because they've got better athletes. They're a little more experienced. We needed turnovers, penalties, or we needed Texas to do what Texas has done a lot this year and the past year. They lay down at some point. They goof off for a quarter or a half. That's what they did against Texas Tech. They were dominating Texas Tech going up into the fourth quarter, and then they goofed off for a quarter. Texas Tech come back and tied it, and then beat them in overtime. That's how you beat Texas. We beat Texas last year in Morgantown because they made some mistakes, threw the ball away, some penalties, shuffled quarterbacks in and out.
We jumped on them and dominated that game, though. We stayed ahead of them the whole time. This one, they punched us in the mouth and got ahead, and we never recovered.
Even in the Morgantown game a year ago, they still had us third and long, and we came through with long passes, even with Mr. Daigie as our quarterback.
Who was it?
But Texas gave us the best game that they played this year. I saw Texas play Alabama. I thought they were the better team. Alabama knocked out their starting quarterback, knocked out this quarterback, and still only won by 1 point in Texas.
On a late field goal.
Well, this quarterback came back, and they played a better game than when they were motivated. This was a must-win for them, because they had just lost and they didn't want 3 losses in the conference.
We got the Texas team that played versus Alabama against us. We didn't get the Texas team that played against Texas Tech at Texas Tech.
Now, absent them helping us with some mistakes, we needed to play an excellent game.
We did. We should have. We needed to, and we didn't.
We didn't do that. Our secondary showed little signs of getting better, although we lost several players to concussions and injuries. They were moving right down the field. We were going to have to outscore them. Well, to outscore them, we wanted a balanced attack. Mr. Brown, who I'm not sure I agree with this, but he said if we could run the ball on Texas, we would beat them. We had trouble running the ball.
We couldn't do it. We couldn't sustain a drive with our running game.
They changed their defensive front just a little bit and screwed up our assignments, and then their linebacking core did a very good job of plugging the holes and slowing down or stopping our running game.
Overshawn's a really good running
Even at that, our running game wasn't bad. It just wasn't good enough to match their ability to go with long passes down the field quickly.
Before we go any farther, let's just let you know, C.J. Donaldson, our running back, that got concussed in that game, got knocked out in that game, and got picked up by an ambulance on a stretcher. He's okay. He was cleared. He traveled back with the team, and he's not going to play against Baylor, but
they have medical requirements that say certain protocols don't even kick in until they're symptom-free and all of that. And of course, they won't tell us the details. But
props to the Texas people and their players who took a knee and prayed for him while he was down. That really was that's beyond the game at that point. So I agree. Texas, their fans and their players. I thought that was great. So.
Now, if you're going to match, my opinion on the matching specifically, I think our lines, our offensive line, our defensive line, were matches for Texas. I'm very impressed with those. they weren't so good that could overcome our
We
weaknesses.
couldn't dominate it, no.
Because our defensive secondary is bad. It's ranked like 123rd in coverage in the nation. It's not good, and we lost Charles Woods, who was our best cornerback. We lost him on the first drive of the first game up in Pittsburgh, and he was thought to be the best cornerback in the Big 12.
That's what his position coach says, and he is definitely very good if he's not the best in the Big 12.
And that means you've got to put secondary people in there, and that goes up the line.
It changes everything. You got one guy who can cover their best guy, and then you can play around that from there. And we haven't been able to do that since. No excuses.
We didn't take advantage of turnovers when they did fumble the ball, and then we had interceptions in our hands that interception. Our defensive man Aubrey Burks gets a hand on their pass and taps it in the air instead of catching it right into the hands of their receiver.
Very similar to Bryce Ford Wheaton against the Pitt in this game when he dropped it and it went to the Pitt guy and he ran it back.
And he ran it for a touchdown. Both times,
the deciding touchdown.
Our bad hands meant scores on their part. We also had, if there was another thing that was revealed in this game, it's that our receivers didn't play well.
Agreed.
Bryce Ford Wheaton had drops. James had drops. Our tight ends.
Mike O'Loughlin had a third down play and he dropped it. He got hurt again, so we don't know if he's going to be able to play anymore.
He was in the end zone last week with a touchdown pass in his hand, and he dropped it.
He didn't catch that.
Our tight ends don't catch the ball, and our receivers lots of times don't catch it. In fact, we're one of the worst teams in the Big 12 for drops. And you can't beat Texas if you're going to execute a play. Everybody on your team does what they're supposed to. The quarterback delivers the ball. You're in the open. It comes to you in hand. You drop it. You're going to drop a few passes, but you can't drop key third and fourth down passes and still beat Texas.
When the margin of error is small, when you're playing against better athletes, and they're a better team when it comes to athletes, the margin of error is small. You can't make the errors. You got to make all the plays good and hope that they make the errors, and that's how you have a chance to win. Right. We didn't. Right. We made errors. They didn't, and so you got what we got. We saw 18 points.
If you want a stark contrast in the difference between quality football and not so much, go back and take a look at our receivers and where the defenders were when the ball was coming to our receivers.
Good point.
Texas's defender would be inches away from our guy, hanging on him or pushing him, and the minute he did catch the ball, the Texas guy would take him down. There was very little yards after catch.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the Texas receivers, and Worthy is
very
receiver.
good. Xavier Worthy's very good.
But they also hit their secondary guy. The secondary receivers for Texas, when they were in the clear for the ball, our guys were sometimes 2 yards, 3 yards, 5 yards away from them, so that when they did catch it, we had to chase them down.
You do know their tight end caught 2 touchdown passes, and one of them was from Worthy, the wide receiver.
Right.
We haven't had a tight end catch 2 touchdown passes since Trayvon Wesco, but moving forward.
They were the better team.
They were the better
It's bothersome. If we played Pitt 10 times, I think we probably beat Pitt 6 or 7 times. If we played Kansas 10 times, I think we may beat Kansas 7 or 8 times. I think we were the better team for every game up to the Texas game, but the Texas team that showed up this past week, I think if we played them 10 times, we'd be lucky to beat them twice. They're a better team.
I would agree. They'd have to make a lot of mistakes.
They'd have to make mistakes, and then we'd have to play top.
And we'd have to not make mistakes.
Let's talk a little bit about the shuffle on the Big 12, by the way, because it is partway through the season, and a lot of the things that people thought were going to happen just didn't happen.
Right about that.
Who would have thought at the beginning of the season that the bottom 3 teams in the Big 12 would be Texas, Oklahoma, and West Virginia?
Well, it's not actually, to correct you just a touch, it's actually Iowa State, Oklahoma,
And
West
Iowa
Virginia.
State. That's right.
Those three have not
That's right.
won a game in the conference. Texas has won a game in the conference. They beat West Virginia.
Right.
But agreed.
Right now, it appears the top team is Oklahoma State, who not everybody was given a lot of credit to when the season started. They're undefeated. They're number 5 in scoring offense in the country. They have a quarterback named Spencer Sanders that's completing like 66% of his passes. And I've seen them, they're very fast. You're used to them being physical, but they're fast this year. We thought they might need some smoothing out, but they seem to be getting smooth because they played Baylor in a rematch of the conference championship and handled Baylor, I thought, pretty well.
They've only played one game in the conference, and that was at Baylor, and they beat Baylor at Baylor, which is so those two teams have played 3 times in the last 18 months, and Oklahoma State's won twice, but Baylor won in the conference championship. Oklahoma State on the 1-yard line. So I agree with you. I think Oklahoma State is probably the best team in the conference.
The next 2 teams in the conference that are undefeated are TCU and Kansas.
Yep.
TCU's got a running back that's averaging 7 yards per carry, and their quarterback, Duggan, is also running the ball a lot with a completion rate of about 75%. So they're an offensive juggernaut so far.
Don't forget about Kansas State. However, TCU's only won one game in the conference, and that was they beat Oklahoma. And if you saw any of that, he threw a couple of passes to receivers that our defenders weren't even as close as
Oklahoma was bad. We don't know if Oklahoma was bad. So the top team beat Baylor. The second team beat Oklahoma.
Yeah.
The third team is Kansas. Their quality wins were over West Virginia, Houston, and Dana Holgorsen.
Houston.
Yeah. Duke and Iowa State.
They did beat Iowa State, and that was a close, tough match, and they found a way to win that. That was impressive.
And
Jalen Daniels.
And that's Kansas with Jalen Daniels, the number 1 quarterback in the nation, and with the quarterback ratings. He can run the ball, he can find the open receiver, and he was the one we were hard to solve.
Why aren't we hearing more about him on a national level? To me, it's not just because they beat us. I've seen the guy play against a couple of teams, and he's really, really good. And Lance Leopold, their coach, is getting a lot of kudos for turning the program around. You got a player like that. I can see what you can do.
He's got other parts of that program working well, too. He's got them together and doing right things. Now, after that comes Baylor. Baylor is... they're
3-2. They're 1-1 in the conference. They lost to Oklahoma State.
They lost to Oklahoma State. There's no shame in that.
They beat Iowa State.
They beat Iowa State. Their defensive front 7 is very good, one of the nationally ranked in allowing yards per rush. They lost a lot of people in their secondary, but I saw them. They're still very quick. They make mistakes, but they come back pretty quick. They're supposed to have a weak receiving core. They drop the ball a lot. Only Oklahoma State and West Virginia drop the ball more often than Baylor.
They're very strong along the lines, the offensive and the defensive lines. They're a little bit hurting at the skill positions, but they're the defending champions of the conference. They've got a good team, and we'll tell you more about them in our Baylor preview because we play them next
edition. That's coming up on a Thursday night. After that, you go to Kansas State. Probably they have a pretty good pass defense. They've picked off 9 times, and the thing about Kansas State is they don't beat themselves. They don't turn the ball over. They don't get a lot of penalties. And so they've been solid. They've been picked as a dark horse, but nobody thought they'd be as good as they were.
They got that transfer quarterback, Adrian Martinez, playing at quarterback, and he's running the ball. He ran it all over Oklahoma State. He ran it last week again. When the film comes out and you start suppressing their running game, because they do have Deuce Vaughn and they got Martinez, are both good runners, you'll find that I'm going to think you're going to find that they don't throw the ball so well. However, they do play very good fundamental football. They don't make a lot of mistakes, and they don't beat themselves. And that's a solid team. That's a very good formula to win.
Texas Tech is a high-scoring, high-flying, lots of passes, go for it on 4th down, take a chance, gambling team. It worked for them against Texas. Yeah. If it doesn't work, then they're going to get beat.
They beat Houston too, didn't they? I think they beat Dana Holgorsen.
They did. I think they needed an overtime, but then Houston plays all their games in overtime.
Yeah, that's true. And they lose them most of the time.
They lose them. After that, you've got Texas and Oklahoma, both of whom have 2 losses in the conference. After that, you've got Iowa State, and they're
got
off
two
to a
losses in the
very
conference, too, yeah.
weak start. So.
Well, they beat Iowa, but then again, Iowa, they don't really score points.
That's impressive to me. They normally lose to Iowa. It's a rivalry game, but Iowa
Iowa's
doesn't
got a
score.
good defense, but they don't score. They just don't score.
So who would have thought at the beginning of the year that Oklahoma and Texas would have been towards the bottom, and TCU, Kansas, and Oklahoma State would have been up at Kansas State would have been up at the top.
A long way to go, though. There is a long way to go. We're only, 5
I hate
weeks
to
into the season.
end on a negative. I want to go back on record because we've been predicting things and been pretty right.
Yeah.
I think Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Texas all have better athletes than us, and we need them to make mistakes and us to play over our heads to beat them. I think we can, but I think I'd favor them most of the time. But I think West Virginia is as good as or better than TCU, Kansas State, Texas Tech, or Iowa State, and it's a toss-up in my mind for Oklahoma. See, I thought Oklahoma at the beginning of the season was probably much better because I thought their new head coach, Venable, who's a defensive coach, would plug up the one weakness that Oklahoma had, which was not great on defense.
Remember
and
that.
Yet they got torched here this last week. I don't know if that's an aberration.
He's never been a head coach before. He's been a defensive coordinator, and I tell people that. And he can come in, but he doesn't really understand how to delegate this stuff. He wants to maybe just coach the defense. I think he's leaving it be. Obviously, something was wrong in that TCU game because they just put 55 up on him. I mean, I
said that to one of my Oklahoma friends that because he was high on Venable and he was convinced Oklahoma had it made, and I said you can't put a new guy in the spot, even if he was an assistant, and expect him to be able to hit the ground running. Exactly. There's so much he has to learn and do. It takes
some time. Yes, it does.
Tell it to the guy at Notre Dame who lost to Marshall.
That's true. So Freeman, I like him a lot too. I think he's a really good. I think he'll be a really good coach.
I will go on record. West Virginia will not end the season at the bottom of the Big 12. They'll be in the middle of the pack or higher. I think we'll upset some people. Even the ones that should beat us, I think we're capable of it. But West Virginia's going through some trauma right now, and we're going to have to see how the boys react. Because there's an awful lot of people throwing mud at us
and dragging them
down.
How about getting behind them and rooting for them and cheering for them? Complaining and talking about them and putting stuff out there on social media. It just doesn't do anybody any good.
Help the team win. Help the players win. Get on their side. We can worry about being critical later.
When the season's over, then you can be critical. That's where I'm at. This is my point.
But if you have another comment on that, send us the comment. Shoot us an email at mountaineerrants.com. Give us a comment. Write in. We want to thank Jack Dixon, Mitchell Friedman, Ted Garner, Bill Galbus, all of you for your comments, and special yell out to TJ Haddix.
Oh yeah, TJ.
TJ gave us some comments on sent it through his mom. But I understand the guy plays in a band, the DBI band in Morgantown and Grafton, and sometimes at football games. Check it out.
He's good because he actually thinks I can sing, so that's kind of cool.
Tell him you can. You've been a guest singer. Go up to him and tell him you came to see his band because you heard about it on
Mountaineer Rants. Absolutely.
And we'll see you next time for the Baylor Preview.
Thank you.